I was debating on whether I should wait until Tuesday to record this episode because of how chaotic the head coaching season is just in general and overall, right? Because I've really waited out on this just because of the fact that I'm thinking, okay, I pray that they interview my personal favorite candidate, Anthony Campanile, but they haven't done that yet, and it doesn't look like they will. And in general, I feel like they've got all the major candidates in right now. Like, I think there will be a couple of minor ones that they'll be like, quick interviews or whatever, but I don't think there will be anything too major to come out during the next couple of days. So I am just going to do this tier list now. So now with that out of the way, what's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Titans Rundown. I am your host, Micah McCamey, and in today's episode, we are going to be going over my personal tier list for the Tennessee Titans head coaching candidates. These are all the guys that have been interviewed so far, and all of the guys that all the guys that have been interviewed so far. Now, again, this list could get a little bigger, and I have no denial of that. And I will consistently update y'all on where I would put each person as the next couple of weeks, as the next couple of days go on. Like, I'll put it on the Twitter, go follow the Titans Rundown, or Instagram, or wherever you want to see it. I will consistently update the tier list to the best of my ability, just so y'all know. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into today's episode, starting out with the not worth mentioning tier. There's only one name in this. You could probably guess who it is. Yeah, Mike McCoy. I'll keep this short and sweet. Mike McCoy was a substitute teacher. He didn't really do much on the sidelines in general, and just overall, I really appreciate him just not being trying to do too much, but also doing just enough to help out Cam Ward during his rookie year. And I will always appreciate the fact they kind of held the Titans together during a period of time of chaos whenever Brian Callahan got fired. And I will also appreciate the fact that I felt like Cam Ward undeniably, A, got better in general, but B, his footwork got better as Bo Hardigree and Mike McCoy got more control over the development of Cam Ward over Brian Callahan, that is. So I will continue to appreciate that from him as an interim head coach. Now, does that mean that he should be the permanent head coach? Not a chance, okay? Again, he didn't do much just in general this year, so I don't think that he is even worth mentioning in general, but I decided to talk about him just because, he's a fun name to bring up. So anyway, now that one's out of the way, now that I can get that one out of the way, just because, I would have felt wrong not mentioning the fact that he got a interview. I mean, heck, Easton Freeze has already said that his bags are packed. He's not going to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. He's not even going to be on the staff, right? So, again, not worth mentioning tier. Mike McCoy, no chance he gets the job, right? Anyway, moving on to the next tier. The what are we doing tier. This is the tier that makes me lose a little bit of faith, that makes me lose a lot of faith, actually, in Mike Borgonzi. I will be like, yeah, Eddie George was right. Ownership really does set a franchise back a decade. And I will be completely dead inside about this one. And I will be giving very little reaction to if one of these guys gets hired. Now, the good news is, not likely that any of these guys get hired. But the bad news is that they're up for interviews, so of course they are going to have at least a very, very tiny chance at this. So let's get into this tier. Starting out with the first one, again, this is kind of in order now that I look at it, just in general. But if we're going to start out with the first one, it's Steve Spagnuolo. Look, he is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. If for some reason something fell through with him and Andy Reid, and we decided, oh yeah, let's go pick him up as our next defensive coordinator. All in, right? He would do wonders for us. And heck, he may even bring a career revival back for L'Jarius Sneed. But I just don't see that happening in general. I think that he is going to be there until the day that he retires or, heaven forbid, dies. But as a head coach, absolutely terrible option. He went 11-41 as a head coach. That's something that most people don't know. You'd be surprised by the amount of people that I have talked to that aren't in the Titans organization, or not like in the organization, but like very into the Titans and are like really up to date with all the coaching candidates and all of the coaches around the NFL in general, you would be surprised by the amount of people that I run into. And I tell them, oh, yeah, he's been a head coach before and he was absolutely terrible. And people are just like, wait, Spagnuolo's been a head coach? You would be shocked about that. And they are even more shocked whenever I bring up to them, yeah, he had an 11-41 record, one of the worst records in NFL history as a head coach. Absolutely horrible idea to bring in Steve Spagnuolo as the next head coach. Now, obviously, the Rams weren't the best situation. Neither were the Giants whenever he was an interim. But he had 4 seasons in the NFL. 3 of those ended in 2 wins or less. Now, again, his second season as a head coach ended in a 7-9 record, which, okay, fine. That wasn't really a building of momentum more than it was the roster that he had bringing at least halfway decent, right? Whenever you take a look at this guy, I just don't get it, man. He went 2-14 in his first year. He went 1-15 in his third year, and then he went 1-4 as the interim head coach. He had a chance to prove as the interim head coach of the New York Giants, hey, look, I may have completely failed in LA, but if I can get this team to be competitive and potentially even win 2 or 3 games, then maybe I can get myself back into the head coaching ranks. But he went on to be the interim head coach for the New York Giants, went 1-4. His team looked completely uninspired during that time. And that really put the nail in the coffin for everybody that, yeah, this dude is just not going to be a head coach, right? And that's fine. There's room in the NFL for great defensive coordinators, and it is completely okay. Most of us won't get that far in life, but he's just not it, okay? So that's Steve Spagnuolo for you. The next one that I want to bring up, I almost want to put this in not worth mentioning tier, just because, like, I don't know, man. He's not going to be the next head coach of the Titans. Everybody knows it, but I had to put it on here solely for one reason and one reason only. It was my reaction to it. Yeah, Jason Garrett is in this tier. Look, okay, yes, he has a decent track record, right? He has a winning record, and not just one of those winning records that's like 31-30 or something like that. Like, he actually has a winning record that's like 10 games above, right? But he hasn't coached in 6 years. His schemes are kind of outdated, and people will never tell you this, but he went on to be the offensive coordinator for the New York Giants the year after he got fired, or the 2 years after he got fired, and he got fired after 1.5 seasons there. It's not like Jason Garrett is some amazing football guru or something. Now, I would be interested in bringing him in as like a positions coach or like a passing game coordinator or something. I would be somewhat interested in that, right? Bring some veteran experience into the room, especially if we go with like a young defensive mind, which those guys we will get to, at least the ones that have been interviewed. But just in general, I just don't think Jason Garrett is the right fit for this. But I will say my reaction to this was just wild. Okay, I was on a mission trip in Baja, Mexico. That was where I was last week, and it's why an episode came out on Friday and it was so long. So while I was there, I got the notification, and like, look, I kept up with it on and off, but like, there's only so much that you can do with like intensely staying on it whenever you are in Mexico, right? And, you're there to help out a couple of people on a mission trip, right? You're not there to obsess over the Titans, right? So I usually just like, oh, okay, they interviewed this guy, like Raheem Morris or Mike McCarthy or something like that, and then I just put it back. But whenever I saw the Jason Garrett notification, I genuinely had to take like a step back and just give myself a minute, because, oh my gosh, that was one of the weirdest experiences I think I've had. It's the most out-of-body experience I think I've ever had covering the Tennessee Titans, and that is saying a lot. Like, I had a wild reaction whenever I saw Dan Graziano predict Aaron Glenn to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. This was far worse. That is absolutely insane. So, and it wasn't even because of how terrible it was. It was because of how out of left field it was, and especially how it was immediately after John Harbaugh became available. Like, it was honestly very Titans, if I'm being honest. Very Titans of the past couple of years, right? So anyway, I just want to say that Jason Garrett, he's not going to be the guy. I am pretty confident. And honestly, there's part of me that wishes I would have put him in not worth mentioning, but still, you still got to at least think about it. Anyway, the next one that I want to bring up is Lou Anarumo. This is, I think, the only non-former head coach to be in a tier this low, if I look at this correctly. Yeah, that's correct. Anyway, so I really don't like Lou Anarumo. He is very old. That's the biggest thing. And he's not old like Mike McCarthy, who has experience. That will be a guy that I get to later. He's not old like a Mike McCarthy who's won a Super Bowl, who's been a head coach, winning record and all that stuff. This dude has not been a head coach at all in his career. This is a guy that honestly, I think one of the Justins over at Music City Audible brought this up, and I think that it was a pretty good thing, and I thought it was a pretty good observation. Lou Anarumo is an old defensive coordinator. The game has probably passed him a little bit, and he really does not need to be a head coach right now. And I agree with that. This dude has his defense playing 18th in yards and 20th in points. Especially his secondary is just playing absolutely terrible, right? And again, there's only so much that you can control. I mean, the Colts secondary has been bad for as long as I can remember, but it is not like that terrible to the point where their rushing defense is like 6th in the league in yards, and their passing defense is really what's bringing them down, right? So again, that's a dude that I would really not be excited about in the absolute slightest if I were to get that notification and it said we were hiring Lou Anarumo, right? Honestly, that feels more like a Giants move. Joe Shane, your move. But anyway, again, not interested in Lou Anarumo. The next one, nope, this isn't the last one. No, wait, it is. The last one that I want to mention is Jonathan Gannon. Now, I had to wrestle because there were two dudes that I wanted to put here, but I put the other one in the next tier. Jonathan Gannon had a pretty bad tenure as a whole. There were flashes of something good in there. Like, I remember just the fact that he went 8-9 after 2 years and even went 4-13 and was really competitive that first year whenever nobody was expecting them to be that competitive in year one. I think that was something that was worth applauding, right? And then he went 8-9, doubled their win record, and it ended up looking like, hey, things may end up being okay. Maybe those really cringy clips of him trying to hype up his team were actually resonating with the players, right? But then this season, it all came crashing back down to earth. Kyler Murray had his worst year as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't pan out. His offensive coordinator was absolutely terrible. They had that intense meltdown against the Titans. That was probably the biggest thing. Part of me wonders if they didn't have that meltdown, how different things are for the Cardinals this year. But still, even then, like maybe we're talking 7-10 versus 3-14, right? Maybe that would have been enough to get Gannon's job. I don't know, but still, a well-coached team does not have an intense meltdown like the Cardinals did during that fourth quarter of play against the Titans, right? So he's a bad head coach, and I don't think that he's great with his staff because people forget that is a big part of this too. Because obviously we want culture builders, leaders, stabilizers. That you'll see that in my top tier a lot. But like you want all of these guys that are experienced leaders, right? You want a dude that can help out with Cam Ward, right? And you want somebody, even if he isn't directly helping out with Cam Ward, he has great staff connections to where he can get a guy that we're pretty confident could help out Cam Ward. Well, Jonathan Gannon would not be able to do that. I mean, like, the dude that he hired as his offensive coordinator, I think his name was Petzing, if I'm remembering correctly, was absolutely terrible during that Cardinals tenure. And that was potentially the worst part of his head coaching tenure. I do wonder if he would have gotten another year with a good offensive coordinator, if he could have ended up being okay. But again, I don't believe that, honestly. And I do think that Jonathan Gannon is probably one of the worst head coaches that I think that I could come up with for the Titans, even interviewing. So again, Jonathan Gannon, hard pass. The next tier is going to be terrible. No, wait, hold on. I read that wrong. The next tier is going to be I won't be happy, but there will be part of me that's intrigued. This is the tier that makes me lose a little bit of faith in Mike Borgonzi, right? This is the tier where I look at it and I'm just like, I don't know about this, right? Like, I don't like this and I don't think it'll be good, but maybe something good happens, right? And I do understand it. Like, this was originally titled See the Vision, and I honestly, after doing this, thought about just renaming it to Retreads, the bad retreads, that is. But still, I want to start out this list by going with Raheem Morris. He is a very mediocre head coach, right? He is decent with schematics. I think that he's a good leader, but I just don't think he knows about clock management. And he got that chance as a CEO style head coach. Because here's the thing, the dude that I have above him called plays as a head coach and was terrible with game management. So maybe he is able to, and this dude, maybe he becomes a CEO coach whenever he comes in next time. And he's able to just lock in on game management, adjustments, and all of that stuff, right? And he lets his coordinators do their play calling, right? So that was something that interested me about the next guy, even though he's still not good. But here's the thing, right? With Raheem Morris, he is a great leader, right? And I think that he would be very stable in general, right? I much prefer him as a defensive coordinator, and I wouldn't be that high on him as a head coach, but I do think that he could at least help maybe stable the ship just a little bit. But overall, I'm not as interested in Raheem Morris, all things considered. The next person that I'm going to bring up is Matt Nagy. Yeah, okay, here's the thing, right? He's already confirmed with inside sources that if he were to get another chance at head coach, he is not going to call plays. He's going to be a CEO-style head coach who is going to have an offensive coordinator who calls plays and a defensive coordinator who calls plays. Here is the thing about Matt Nagy, right? This is potentially the biggest boom or bust one, and one of the people that you either are really intrigued by or that you just don't want anything to do with, right? Because I could see a world where Matt Nagy becomes a head coach again, is a CEO style head coach who focuses on his leadership and in-game management and ends up being okay. Because I saw a take that was talking about how, oh yeah, it's a terrible idea for him to be a CEO style coach because he's not that great of a leader. I don't know if that's true. I think that more so it was a learning experience in Chicago about him losing himself as a leader. And now he's thinking that he may have got it back. Now, has he? Who knows? But still. And B, there's a lot more to being a CEO style coach than just not calling plays and being a leader, right? And being a glorified cheerleader. There's also game management, adjustments, being able to know a decent amount about the offensive and defensive side, right? There are multiple layers whenever it comes to being a head coach that is a CEO style type of coach, right? And I do think that maybe that could end up being for the better for Matt Nagy, is that he doesn't have to worry about calling plays and being worried about game management. I think that that could end up being fine. But I still don't have that much faith in him. I mean, the more that his tenure went on, the worse the team got. And the fact that, he would have teams that would start out really hot and then end the year really cold, that really bothers me. How he tried to help and develop Justin Fields concerns me. The fact that he didn't take too much accountability in general as a head coach also concerns me. Like, there are a lot of big red flags with Matt Nagy. There is no doubt about that. And I even question his scheme at times. Like, there are a lot of red flags with Matt Nagy. But I will say, maybe, just maybe, he could work out on a very slight chance. But I don't think he will, and that is why he is in the not happy. But I could see it. He's the literal definition of this tier. I won't be happy if Nagy gets hired, but I will come on here and tell y'all, hey, I do see the idea behind this, right? Even if I do think it's buddy higher. But anyway, next one that I want to move on to is Vance Joseph. He is near the top, and honestly, I think that the top of this tier was more biased than anything. But Vance Joseph, whenever he was the head coach, was bad at game management, man. He was bad at that. He didn't know when to go for it. He would call timeouts in bad situations, and he wasn't the greatest with adjustments, right? Vance Joseph was not a good head coach, and he genuinely had one of the lesser coaching tenures in NFL history, right? But to be fair to him, he had to go through an intense gauntlet of guys like Trevor Siemian, Case Keenum before he got good, and Brock Osweiler. 3 genuinely horrible quarterbacks that should have never gotten the opportunity to start, right? And you got to think about this. This was right after Gary Kubiak had retired. Peyton Manning was gone. So basically, it was like, hey, fix the fire, right? Like, we just got a nuke dropped on us. Rebuild the city. Yes, that was taken from MCA, if I'm being completely honest. But I thought it was a good analogy, right? So, again, I don't think that he is the best option, but I do think that he is a good mind, and I think that he is an effective communicator and good leader in general, with very solid connections that people don't talk about. I mean, he's a veteran, he's been around for a while, but the biggest thing for me is that he has that connection to Davis Webb. If he brings in Davis Webb as his offensive coordinator and he gets better at game management, then he would be a big-time hire, right? I think that Davis Webb is an offensive coordinator. I think that he would stay for 2 or 3 years, honestly, because I think that nobody would pull the trigger on him as a 30-year-old head coach. So I would be interested, to say the least, in a Vance Joseph team. And I would be more intrigued than these two, but those game management concerns really get to me. So I cannot 100% say with confidence that I would want Vance Joseph as the head coach. The last one that I want to put on here is Arthur Smith. He's at the top of this tier. Honestly, it probably should have been Vance Joseph, but I am sorry. I cannot let the nostalgia take over in me whenever I was thinking about this. Seeing Arthur Smith back in the two-tone blue, I couldn't help myself, right? And maybe it's a pull for Derrick Henry to come back. He goes and plays with his old offensive coordinator where he had his best years with, right? I'm just saying, that's a thought. And again, I do sometimes think that Arthur Smith gets too bad of a rap whenever he was with the Atlanta Falcons. Even though they got maybe like a touch better with Raheem Morris, it's not like they were amazing or anything. I mean, Arthur Smith consistently went 7-10 with what? Taylor Heineke, Desmond Ridder, and Marcus Mariota. Look, I love Mariota as much as the next guy, but he was never going to be a full-time starting quarterback. He is a bridge at best, right? So I do think that there is some intrigue with me about, like, what if he had like an actual quarterback like Cam Ward as the head coach, right? I don't think it would go too well, but it is something that I am intrigued by, to say the least, right? And again, that nostalgia really kicks in, man. And who knows, maybe he's like Josh McDaniels, who is terrible literally everywhere else he goes, but whenever he's in New England, he is absolutely phenomenal, right? That could be the story here as well. So I am just saying that Arthur Smith gets maybe a little bit too bad of a rap, but the way that he used his weapons in Atlanta was really concerning to me. And just in general, like, I question his leadership ability. Like, I think that he's a fine leader, but he comes off as really weird in his leadership. Now, who knows? Maybe it worked, but I don't know. I don't see it. Okay, the next one that I want to go into is very intrigued and mostly happy. Look, with this tier, I am very, like, okay, there's only one that the very intrigued part comes in, because the rest of these I would be very happy with, right? But with this first one, I would only be very intrigued. I couldn't say that I wouldn't be happy about it, but I won't say that I would be like through the roof about it, right? So the first one in this tier is Cliff Kingsbury. I almost thought about putting him in a tier of his own because he is just the weirdest candidate on here. Because here's the thing, right? I think that he would be amazing for Cam. I think that he would develop Cam into something very solid. And I think that he would help the offense get back on the right track. For everyone else, though, I don't know, right? I really don't know about him for everybody else concerned with the roster, right? I don't know if the O-line would play all that. Like, I don't know. I don't know. His leadership ability is really what gets me here. I think that he is a great offensive mind, and I think he'll be a heck of an offensive coordinator for whoever decides to hire him to that position. But I just don't think we're in the right space to have Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator or a head coach at that, because of the fact that, well, you know, it's the fact that I feel like that for a quarterback who is developing, I can't get on board with him as the next head coach, or heck, you would have to convince me to get on board with him as the next offensive coordinator, because I do think that his offense isn't amazing for quarterback development in general. Like, I want my quarterback to learn like all of the like true NFL X's and O's before he plays in a Cliff Kingsbury offense. Like, I think that a Detroit Lions or a Philadelphia Eagles, especially Philadelphia, I think that those two would be golden fits for him. I just don't think that the Titans are really in a position for that. But again, I think that his development of Cam Ward would make me just fine enough with it, because I do feel like that Cam Ward would make big strides under him. I don't know if he'd stay around for intensely long, but I do think that he would bring a good offensive mind into a building that has been lacking one since Arthur Smith, probably. So anyway, that's the first one. Now these guys, this is where it really starts, where I'm like actually genuinely happy about these guys being the next head coach overall. So let's get into that. Starting out with Jesse Minter. He is a great defensive mind, not offensive. He is an absolute wizard on that side of the ball. He has the Mike Macdonald schematics, and they are honestly just as good as Mike Macdonald's, right? But there is some concern there, right? I question his leadership. Like, he doesn't come off as a, as a rah-rah leader guy, right? That's going to really change the culture and all of that. But there are other guys across the league that communicate really weirdly. I mean, heck, Mike Macdonald is one of those dudes, and yet he still has a 14-3 team that could end up winning the Super Bowl this year, right? So that is something that I am a little concerned about, but it still is something that could be just off, that I could be just off on alongside a lot of other people. But I question that leadership style, and there are some other things about him that I don't know about. His offensive connections is really the bigger thing. Anyway, no, the biggest thing for me, though, is that out of all of the candidates that coordinated in the playoffs, he was bar none the best candidate. He was bar none just the best performance that any of those guys had, right? Some people felt bad for Justin Herbert last night. I did. I won't deny that. I felt really bad for Jesse Minter. He schemed up a masterful game plan that forced 3 turnovers on a usually really solid and not turnover-esque Patriots team, and he kept on consistently scheming up coverage sacks in general, making up for the fact that the defensive line just isn't as strong in general. Like, he did some very good things during that game, but just overall, man, I would be very happy about this, right? But there is a part of me that's just like, what if his leadership isn't good enough? And what if he's a Walmart Mike Macdonald, right? But I still would be happy about it, because I would assume that if you sit down with him and interview him, you can tell if he's a leader or not, right? I think that's the biggest thing. That would make me happy with him. So anyway, Jesse Minter, interesting choice. I would be happy with it. Next one that I want to mention is Robert Saleh. Okay, this is a dude that I would rock with, right? He is a tough son of a gun. He is an elite defensive mind. He's got phenomenal connections across the NFL. What is his biggest thing? I questioned some of his stuff whenever he was in New York. I felt like that his game management wasn't too amazing. And here's the thing, right? With Nagy, and I think this is something that Nagy has over Saleh, which is very shocking. I think that with Nagy, him giving away play calling duties is a better solution to that, right? But some of Saleh's weird game management decisions in general, like, that won't be remedied, because here's the thing. Robert Saleh has stated that he plans on taking defensive play calling duties if he ends up being the head coach once again with a specific franchise, right? Now, here's the thing. I do think that his game management may have been a little overblown because of the fact that, well, his team wasn't ever really that great. I mean, I think that the Aaron Glenn New York Jets really showed that, but I don't know, man. I really do not know with Saleh, right? I think that he is the biggest boomer bust, right? Like, I've obviously said that about Matt Nagy, but here's the thing. I lean bust with Nagy, but I really don't know which way to lean with Saleh, because here's the thing. He's either going to bring in a great offensive coordinator, bring in great offensive minds that he can consistently keep on staff, that keep on replacing said offensive coordinator who's probably going to be gone for a head coaching job. He ends up learning game management. His defenses are elite. And in general, he just becomes a great head coach, right? It's either going to be that or the defensive play calling makes his game management worse. He doesn't put his connections to good use and ends up hiring a dude that can barely call plays, and his defense takes a big tumble down to earth because of the fact that he's calling it instead of a defensive coordinator, right? So, again, Saleh, really boom or bust. I would be happy with it because I feel like that we would be stocking on the boom side of it, if you will, and I would be interested in that. The next one that I wanted to mention was Jeff Hafley. This is a dude that has a great mind. He is a very tough leader. He has, his offensive coordinator connections are the thing that kind of concerns me because outside of the non-play calling OC currently in Green Bay and Adam Stenavich, who I don't even know if he wants to leave, right? Like outside of that dude, I have no idea about like what exactly him as his offensive coordinator would entail. I mean, sure, there's that quarterback coach, and he's been around for a long time, so maybe he has more connections than I'm expecting. But I don't know. He just comes off as a dude that doesn't have like amazing coordinator connections, right? But still, I don't really care about that because if he is the right guy, he will find the right offensive mind. And I think that he has a phenomenal defensive mind. He is the godfather of Anthony Campanile, basically. Like, he is the one that basically passed down his schematics to Camp and was like, okay, use these whenever you get somewhere as a defensive coordinator in the league. And that's what he's done, and he's been just as phenomenal as Jeff Hafley has been. And honestly, I really am bitter about the fact that he's not on this list because he would have been ranked pretty dang high, let me tell you that. But still, we got Jeff Hafley here, who has the same system, and he has the aura of a head coach, if you will. I do genuinely believe that. And he is a very tough leader, right? I question his offensive coordinator connections, but this dude would be absolutely phenomenal as a head coach. He will land something this cycle, and this is one of the only current not first-time coaches that I can firmly say with confidence, yeah, that dude is going to be a stud, right? Okay, now we into the big dogs. I titled this tier, I'm Eating Italian. I mean that as in, I will eat a full-on Italian meal if one of these guys gets hired as the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. I will be really proud of the organization in general. I will be all in on Mike Borgonzi, and I will be very happy about it just in general, right? So, anyway. And I say I'm eating Italian because of, Mike Borgonzi being from New York and having like that New York Italian type accent. So anyway, the first one that I put in this tier is Mike McDaniel. You want to talk about offensive geniuses. I mean, we mentioned Cliff Kingsbury earlier. I think that Mike McDaniel is Cliff Kingsbury on steroids. That's how I feel. At the very least, right? I think that dude is absolutely just phenomenal as an offensive mind, right? He has the similar things to what Kingsbury does, but the difference with him is that I think that he has a very weird leadership style, but I think that it works. The only reason that I say that is because this team started out 1-6. They were really bad. Tua was actively the worst quarterback in the NFL whenever he was starting. And Mike McDaniel had to do a complete switch up of like, yeah, we're going to focus on the run game from now on for this offense. And even with all of that and starting out 1-6, the team finished 7-10. And I don't know if y'all remember this. This team was genuinely being considered for a wild card spot. So here's the thing, right? I think that he is actually Brian Flores without all of the controversy. And I mean that as in on the offensive side of the ball. I think that he is a good leader, a better one than people expect. He is a genius on his side of the ball, and he is completely overqualified to go be a coordinator right now. I 100% believe that. And honestly, I would be very happy if this dude ended up being the head coach. And here's the thing, right? I don't think that he will get hired as the Ravens head coach. I think the Ravens end up with Jesse Minter. And that's the only team that I would even be slightly worried about getting him because the Falcons are all in on John Harbaugh. And I do think that they would end up hiring a different offensive mind. I think that Clint Kubiak would be the automatic favorite if John Harbaugh decides not to go there. And the third thing, and then everybody else, I mean, like, are we even kidding right now? The Giants will land Harbaugh in this alternate universe where we still need a head coach. And then the Browns and the Raiders, yeah, okay, we would definitely be the favorite out of those guys. I 100% believe that. And I think that he is one of the best ones that is realistic in general. But my biggest question with him is, will his style click, right? Because, it is a very weird style that a certain type of locker room will really cling on to, and another type of locker room will be like, I don't know about this, right? So I am very interested in the idea of Mike McDaniel. I think that he would bring swagger to an organization that so desperately has needed it for so long. And I genuinely believe that this dude is going to go on to be a head coach again. And I think that he will do even better than he did during his time in Miami. Anyway, that's my first one. And even then, a lot of these dudes are probably going to end up being bad. And this was a post that I saw on Twitter. A lot of these dudes are going to be bad. So why not hire a dude that's at least going to be a content machine? I mean, obviously I want that, but like a dude that's going to be a content machine and is, a very good offensive mind that will probably help Cam Ward develop, right? You can hire this dude, and if he doesn't work out in 3 to 4 years, maybe you have a playoff appearance by then or something like that, and you can go after a defensive mind or an offensive mind that's a little younger, a little bit more unproven, but at the very least has a very intriguing upside, right? That you can fulfill because your organization has gotten back on the right track with McDaniel. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that one. The next one that I want to mention is Kevin Stefanski. This dude is a 2-time coach of the year, great offensive mind that really wanted Cam Ward in the draft. And I think that this is a dude that's really going under the radar right now. Like, I seriously would not be shocked if he ends up the next Titans head coach, right? Unless John Harbaugh goes to the Falcons, I do think that Kevin Stefanski would end up being the next head coach of the Giants if that were to be the case, correct? But still, Stefanski, he really wanted Cam Ward, and he was really hoping that he dropped to 2, and by some miracle that they were able to draft him. That's why they traded down after he didn't become available. The next thing is that he's made the playoffs twice with the Browns. Honestly, what he did in Cleveland is just as impressive as some teams as like building a consistent playoff machine with Dallas. I 100% believe that. Right. And in general, I just think that he has very good connections throughout the league. He's very respected. And overall, I really like him. But I do question his leadership. And this was brought to my attention, and I have questioned it. Is he a product of Jim Schwartz being one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL? Now, here's the thing, right? I do think if Kevin Stefanski were to get hired to the Titans, I think that Jim Schwartz ends up going with him. Like, maybe he takes the Browns head coaching job if they offer that. But I genuinely believe that Jim Schwartz would absolutely love to come back to Tennessee. He's our Josh McDaniels in some ways. The dude that, except for the fact that he has success elsewhere, right? But he comes to Tennessee. He has a lot of success. He goes to Detroit where he has decent success, but still just always falls short. Then he goes back to Tennessee during the Vrabel days, but then leaves them again. So I'm hoping that it could be a similar thing where he comes back once again, and then stays here for good, kind of like what it seems like McDaniels is doing, but again, weird stuff happening with Vrabel. So anyway, I am interested in the Kevin Stefanski hype train, and honestly, I do really hope, I would be very happy if he ended up being the next head coach. All right, my next one is Mike McCarthy. Okay, I know that this one's star has faded a little bit, like with all of these intriguing head coaching candidates, like, ooh, Harbaugh this, or ooh, McDaniel that. This dude has faded a little bit in the spotlight, right? In a year where, honestly, if there weren't so many chaotic firings, he would probably be the top dog in the head coaching search. If Stefanski, Harbaugh, and McDaniel hadn't become available, I 100% believe that Mike McCarthy is the number one head coaching candidate in the cycle, bar none, right? But, most people's number one. I mean, I have a personal one that I think is a little bit better than him outside of the obvious, but still, he has amazing experience. He helped develop Aaron Rodgers into what he became. He's a good leader. He knows what he's doing, right? He will stabilize the ship at the very least, even if it ends terribly and the Titans end up being just like 7-10, 9-8 at the ceiling, right? I think that he will at least stabilize things, right? And I think that he has a good offensive mind overall. But the question is he a little too old-fashioned? I mean, like, look, Okay, I've heard the reports that he is rejuvenized and that he is excited to get back into coaching. And that's why I don't question his elderliness, right? Because I do think that genuinely he wants to come back and he wants to make an impact on another franchise, right? But I do think that there is also a slight worry in the back of my head. What if he ends up not being that great, right? Like, what if he is like too old school for the job and his play calling is out of date, and that leads to Cam Ward not really developing as much as we'd like him to, right? And still, even with that, I would be fine with it because what I have noticed is that Mike McCarthy, ironically enough, after you fire McCarthy, like your next head coach actually ends up being really good. Like Schottenheimer was a good head coach overall in Dallas, I do believe that. And then even before that with the Green Bay Packers, I know that people wanted LaFleur to be fired, but he is a great head coach. So again, I do think that there is an upside to what happens after McCarthy, and he will consistently help you to try and get into the playoffs whenever he is with you. So again, I like McCarthy, but I do question, like, is he, a bit too old for it? My number 2 and my pseudo number 1, I guess, because of the next dude being potentially unrealistic, but it's Chris Shula. He is a phenomenal defensive mind. He has an intense fire on the sideline. You saw that during the Carolina Panthers game. He is a very great defensive mind. He has phenomenal offensive coordinator connections. He has amazing connections through the McVay tree. He has connections to former offensive coordinators across the league, like Alex Van Pelt. I know that he's not amazing, but I would still take him over most of the things that we've had. Thomas Brown, he has a connection to Mike McDaniel. If he were to finally decide, you know what, I think I'm going to sit this head coaching cycle out. He has a connection to I think he has a connection to Kingsbury somehow. So if you were to tell me that you could get a coaching staff with Raheem Morris as your defensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator becomes one of Shieldhouse Cliff, even with me trying to be convinced about it, I would still be excited about that. Or Mike McDaniel, I would be sold immediately, right? I think that is a perfect combination. So my question really is, though, is he too young for the job, right? Like, I don't know if he is ready to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. There is part of me that really thinks that he is and that he's wise beyond his years, but there's also another part of me that's just like, I don't know, right? Like, there's part of me that genuinely thinks, like, I don't know if he's ready. I mean, that's really about it. I don't know if he is ready to take on the responsibilities of game management, defensive play calling, hiring an offensive coordinator, making sure that you have the Titans show, making sure to study up on the film of your next opponent, right? Like, I don't know if he's ready for that. But again, I don't know. I think that he is probably the closest thing to a Mike McDonald in this entire just like hiring process. And I do think that he would do absolutely phenomenally. Again, everybody said everything that you need to know about him. I even made a video about him if you want to go check that out. I think I can put a card right here. I'll try and find it. But again, overall, really great head coaching candidate. Chris Shula is. And he is my highest ranked first timer because I do genuinely believe that he has the most potential out of all of them. And honestly, I don't think he has the lowest floor out of them. I think that the lowest floor is Jesse Minter. And the highest floor is probably Jeff Hafley, if I had to say. But still, again, Chris Shula, phenomenal idea, right? But the last one that I wanted to mention, the obvious number 1 for almost any sensible person right now, is John Harbaugh. Okay, look, call it unrealistic. I don't care. And who knows? Maybe by the time that I post this, we will already be out of contention, right? And I will completely take that. I will take that with might about like, hey, maybe so. But I saw a short recently that said sometimes you just got to whip out some hot takes. I think that the Titans are very likely to end up in the Harbaugh sweepstakes. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he seriously considers us. I won't say that he'll get the job 100%. Like, I'm not going that far like RJ did over on Twitter. But I will say, I think that he could end up being the next head coach. Okay? Now, this is not going to be dedicated to his positives and negatives because, what else is there to say? He's a great leader. He's got great connections all across the NFL. and he is an intense leader that would stabilize everything within the Titans organization. There's not that much else to say about him as the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. He would be phenomenal. And I guess that maybe the only criticism that you could come up with is like maybe he has actually lost touch and it wasn't that the message was getting stale. Like that could be possible, right? But I don't think it is. I don't think it's the case. But now I'm going to pitch you on why it could happen. With the Atlanta Falcons, I think that they nearly sold their chance at it today, honestly, with saying that a phone call between Matt Ryan and John Harbaugh was an head coaching interview. Are you kidding me? Like, that is a bad look for your organization. And also the fact that immediately after that notification came out, Micah Garofalo, I think is his last name, immediately says that the Titans are of a major interest whenever it comes to John Harbaugh and his next head coaching spot, right? And the Giants, here's the thing, right? I do think that he could very likely end up with the Giants. I would 100% believe that. And if they did end up getting him, fine, okay? I would 100% understand. But I remember Jonathan Jones said it was probably between the Falcons and the Giants for him as the head coaching spot, and that we are third place right now. Here's the thing. I think that the Falcons, I don't think they've completely blown it with Harbaugh, but I don't think it was a good light whenever it came to what Harbaugh was thinking. But the Giants, I think that they could very easily blow it. Like, they could blow it really bad. You have Joe Shane as your GM, right? And this could be one of those situations where being too patient with a guy comes back to bite you in the tail, right? And I could very easily see him just completely blowing up whenever it comes to him trying to pitch the idea to John Harbaugh, a dude that's not really fit for the GM role in general, ends up trying to pitch this idea to Harbaugh, and it just comes off as really weird and awkward in general. And then John walks out of it being like, I don't know about this. Sure, the roster is talented, but I don't know if I want to work with this buffoon, right? That is a very likely scenario. And here's the thing. I am 100% confident that Mike Borgonzi and John Harbaugh will hit it off. And I do think that Borgonzi is very prepared to give a very solid pitch to John Harbaugh about like, hey, this is our job. This is what we're going to do. And, you know, he's going to give it very confidently, very charismatically. And I think that he and Harbaugh would get along in general, right? That is my thing, right? I think that we have a lot more likely of a chance at third place than most people think. Now, will he end up it? Probably not, but I do 100% believe that some of the mistakes of the other two teams, whenever it comes to the Falcons and the Giants in general, could very easily lead to the Titans taking a first place in this and finally getting that head coach that we know is going to be a certified baller, right? So anyway, that's it for today's episode. My voice is absolutely exhausted, but I really enjoyed recording this, and I really enjoyed talking about all of these head coaching candidates individually in general, because now that we have mostly the full list, it's nice to break this down. So anyway, I have Instagram and Twitter under the Titans Rundown if you want to go check those out. And I am writing articles for Music City Miracles still. And again, this week, instead of doing a head coaching profile, I will be doing a draft profile from one of the dudes that we really want. I'll do one over the significant edge players, the receivers. Maybe I could do one over the cornerbacks. Like, all of the biggest needs that the Titans have, I will cover. So anyway, that's going to do it all for me. This has been a rundown of your Tennessee Titans. I love y'all, and tighten up.